go. Should be recording. All right, what's up, guys? We're gonna be watching Watch the Water. Not too sure what it's about. No, it has to do with COVID. No, it has to do with snake venom, some type of conspiracy theory. Skipped over this first part. It kind of looks like a news segment. He's talking about kind of some of the bad stuff that happened during COVID. Definitely should give it a watch, but just not something I'm gonna watch during this video. All right, let's just get it going.
There were certain things that I could say and could not say, and I referenced that certain people's lives might be at risk, and one of those people is here with me now, Dr. Brian Artis. Thanks a lot for being here.
I do really appreciate the opportunity to do this. Yeah, this is actually going to be the only time I've ever been nervous in any interview. I'm not kidding. Like, I've never been nervous to discuss anything in relationship to the COVID pandemic whatsoever. But this has bothered me and has scared me.
Putting things out is probably oftentimes the best way to protect yourself. But people have lost their lives over what you're about to tell the world.
I have to get this off my chest. My spirit's like screaming
people
to
dying
say
during
something
COVID, or people dying
and bring
trying
it
to
to the
talk
forefront.
about it.
To protect as many innocent lives as possible. That's all I've been trying to do since May of 2020. As you know, when I read Anthony Fauci's memo on remdesivir, when I actually just hyperlinked, clicked the links to the studies that he was quoting saying that remdesivir was safe and effective, I knew right away that he was lying. I knew right away that this drug was going to be used to mass murder a whole bunch of innocent people in America that did not need to die. Then he was going to sell the world on the idea in the media that they were dying of a virus, when in fact I knew they were being poisoned to death with this drug. I knew 30% of all people were going to experience multiple organ failure, kidney failure, septic shock, and hypotension. That's what the studies said. Now we're a year and a half after that, and it's exactly
on April
the numbers
11th,
that I
so
said,
it's fairly
based on
recent.
those studies.
That definitely makes a difference.
I'm pretty much called the remdesivir guy everywhere I go, which is odd for a retired chiropractor to be referenced as a pharmaceutical guy. But it is true, remdesivir is a very toxic, deadly drug. There are a lot of medical doctors and professionals who will mention that as it's just proven to be ineffective. It is not ineffective. It is very toxic and deadly. It is known and proven to actually injure specific organs in your body. It targets specific organs. This is a part of why
That's
I
how
think
people should probably. I'll
my
definitely
spirit
look
is
into
so
that too.
moved
But
to make sure this gets out is that
he's gonna cry.
in January 21st of this year, so just 2 months ago, the FDA decided to authorize remdesivir as the only drug to be authorized to be used in all newborns in this country.
Medication should only be administered in settings which healthcare providers are able to access medications, treatment, supervision, and management such as that. COVID-19 pediatric pain weighing 3.5 kilograms or less than 40 kilograms. Patients less than 12-year-olds. This guy's giving me very, is it Dr. Malone? The guy that was on, the Joe Rogan podcast? Very same, like, oh, I'm scared to talk, you know? Which gives them, it's hard to deny, hard to accept, no really way of showing it, you know?
I cannot even fathom the men or women in charge that would actually do that. So it's now been moved since January 21st of 2022. It's been moved out of hospitals as the only drug to be used, only allowed in hospitals this entire
It's weird that
pandemic.
that'd be the only drug.
Now they're moving it into in and out of hospital care for children as young as newborns, 7 pounds heavy, through the 18-year pediatric age range. It's the only authorized drug. There is nothing else that they're allowing for COVID-19 treatment. I find that incredibly evil. And then they've also now canceled monoclonal antibody uses throughout the United States and all U.S. territories for COVID.
The Joe Rogan used that, it worked. The ivermectin, people used that, it worked. It's very weird that they stopped this stuff.
COVID-19 early treatment, and they're moving
I don't
remdesivir
know.
to the infusion
doctor
centers where they
knows.
were using monoclonal antibodies as the only IV infusion drug allowed. I have been moved with one singular purpose since May of 2020. When I read Anthony Fauci's memo about remdesivir, I felt this spark inside of me that I now had to go voice to the world a warning to try to protect as many innocent lives as possible from being killed.
Do the opposite.
So let's talk about what happened. It all started with a text. There's a medical doctor that I admire and love because he is nonstop from the beginning of COVID. Has had the ability to project information and say to people around the world, you do not have to fear COVID. We have an answer. This guy has been on many stages with me. He still practices right now medicine and is an ER doc. And he sent me a text. It actually was dated December 1st. And I did not see it until like December 18th. I don't know how I didn't see it, but the text read, "Hey, Dr. Artis, if you got bit by a rattlesnake, would you go to a hospital and get anti-venom?" And I realized when I saw him that he must have saw an interview I did on InfoWars.
InfoWars
So,
interview.
Kate Daly did an interview with me and wanted to go over my thoughts on monoclonal antibodies. Well, I've been given some research studies that actually bothered me. I didn't like the idea based on the data in these research studies. I didn't think monoclonal antibodies were safe long term, not short term, but long term. And I read the actual text message, got in the shower, and while I was in the shower, I was sitting there thinking, why would he send me that text? It has nothing to do with COVID, like zero, nothing to do with COVID. So I'm going through this and I'm thinking about the text, and all my brain keeps going to is, why is he mentioning, wouldn't I go get anti-venom? Is there something about anti-venom I don't know? So I actually got out of the shower and went and got on the internet, and I wanted to know what is anti-venom, only to find out that most antivenoms are monoclonal antibodies or polyclonal antibodies. And then I got it. Then I knew why he sent it to me. He wanted me to immediately see a question that he knew I would say, of course I would. If I got bit by a rattlesnake, of course I'm going to go to the hospital and get anti-venom. So in his mind, I think he knew this was a way, or God inspired him to send me this message, that Dr. Artis would be able to relate yes to the answer, then go figure out why it is he would say yes. Okay. This is where it all started. I will repeat what Steve Kirsch said to an audience with me last month. He said, if the CDC says something to do, you do the opposite. If the NIH says to do something, go to the opposite. FDA, do the opposite. I'm sitting there realizing that antivenom is monoclonal antibodies, and that I immediately revert back to you in my own head. I'm not trusting anything the CDC, NIH, or FDA says. Is our federal health agencies, are they recommending monoclonal antibodies for COVID-19? Now, this is in the middle of December. No, they're not. They've been bad-mouthing monoclonal antibodies this whole time.
Stripped them out of Florida like a Santa farm.
And then January.
Yeah, I mean, they have been bad mouthing. The Joe Rogan did the antibodies, and ivermectin, it was going crazy. But I figured it was more of like they make money. They were making money off the antibodies and the ivermectin. That's what I heard. So that's why they were bad mouthing it. I guess he'll probably explain.
January 21st of this year, they totally stripped out monoclonal antibodies. They do not want you touching monoclonal antibodies. They also didn't want you from the beginning to touch hydroxychloroquine.
Yeah.
They also don't want you touching ivermectin. They also don't want you touching NAC and acetylcysteine. So the things they tell you to avoid, we know they're telling you to avoid because they work. So when I realized that the federal health agencies actually were not supporting monoclonal antibodies, I mean, in an instant, I realized I was wrong. That the CDC, NIH, and the FDA are bad-mouthing monoclonal antibodies for a reason. They know they work.
And we believe that this is because they want people intentionally to not recover.
Absolutely certain.
Yeah.
No, there's no doubt about that. But no, this actually got way more evil for me since I read that text than even before I read the text. I cannot
believe the amount of
evil behind this pandemic with what I've realized since then. I realized all of a sudden that monoclonal antibodies are anti-venom. The federal government does.
I guess one thing I have a question about is I don't think all antibodies are the same. Maybe I'm wrong, but would every antibody be a anti-venom? Like there's no way people knew this was an anti-venom. If it is, obviously, who knows? But why would they use that if it wasn't? Like, why would they start using monoclonal antibodies if it's just for anti-venom? You know,
Doesn't want us
instead of
using
for the flu. We're gonna use it for
anti-venom.
the flu.
Why are they bashing anti-venom, and why are we finding anti-venom works against COVID? Is it not a virus? Is it a venom? Like, this is what I want to know. Like, is COVID a venom, and this is why they don't want you using monoclonal
Like
antibodies?
correlation is a
That sounds
causality type thing.
completely insane as a theory.
It is completely insane.
Completely insane.
How would the masses be infected by snake bites?
Yeah, let me ask you a question. Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Do you believe the mass media is controlled?
Of course.
Do you actually do believe that?
Yes.
So you believe that whatever's being pumped out in the media is being orchestrated and controlled?
Of course.
Like across all of it?
Across all of it.
Okay, good. All right, so in my head I was like, okay, how do they keep people on that story? So there's this mass media group who are telling a huge story. They're all telling the same story around the world. Whenever anybody says anything against that narrative, what do they use now to combat that in the mainstream media?
Disinformation.
Yeah, they call them fact checkers.
Yeah, fact checkers.
I love fact checkers.
Checking is the opposite of fact checking.
The arbiters of lies are the fact checkers.
By definition, fact checkers are to divert you from truth and take you back to a narrative you're
By
being sold
definition.
worldwide.
Right.
If it's true that COVID could actually be snake venom, and how I got there was they don't support the use of anti-venom called monoclonal antibodies because they work. The easiest way to figure that out is, has that ever been fact checked? And I wanted to know, was there ever any mention that the source could have been a snake? And oh my God, I couldn't believe it. Over in the media, in January, February of 2020, are non-stop publications that the original source could either be from bats, snakes, or pangolins. And every time the snake is mentioned, fact checkers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, constantly fact check it and spin it to the bats. There's no fact checking about bats. They keep letting you look at bats. In the beginning, in January of 2020, the scientists inside of China said this can't be from these bats. These bats hibernate and it's the winter. When they did genetic sequences from the antibodies in the people who...
Wasn't this supposed to come from some type of market, like a food market? So, like, I don't think you could kill I mean, maybe it's not a thing, I don't know. But
were sick in Wuhan, they found that their genetic sequence was not most like bats. They were most like two snakes. Proteins from the Chinese crate and the king cobra.
That's right.
And I find in April 2020, there's a research study published in France where they're finding that the receptors in the brain called nicotinic acetylcholinesterase receptors,
I've heard about those before,
that these are actually bound most tightly to snake venom of crate and cobra is what they're finding, and that the spike protein from SARS-CoV-2 is most identical to Chinese crate and king cobra venom. Then I find out that there's an actual doctor who works at the University of Pittsburgh in May.
This is insane.
In May of 2020.
This is insane.
Works in a computational lab dealing with genetic sequencing. And he's been researching for 5 months. Sequencing of spike proteins. Trying to solve the mystery of SARS-CoV-2 victims. And he says he's got a big press release. They're going to actually announce all their findings.
Big press release. Okay.
and Bing Liu is his name.
Setback in the
Bing
quest
Liu.
to understand coronavirus
Come on.
after a researcher
Come on.
is shot and killed. 37-year-old Bing Liu was on the verge of making significant findings on COVID-19.
And that's when I freaked out. That's when I freaked out. Also, all of the clippings in the media when they interview his boss, who is still at the University of Pittsburgh, last name is Bahar. Every time he was interviewed, he said that they were going to publish the work they found through Bing Liu's work in their department. That's never been published. I'd like to know why. A year and a half later, that's never been published. Where is it? And then all of a sudden, the realization came that this is the great lie. When I say that they have lied to you about everything in relationship to COVID, they've even lied about the viral part of COVID. Now you have to understand here, my entire stance for the last year and a half has been to educate, warn people about hospital protocols because of a drug called remdesivir. So, in this realization that this could all be related to venom, something bothered me in the January 21st EUA that came out from the FDA about remdesivir. In this 42-page document, it actually says there's only one drug that cannot be co-administered with remdesivir at the same time because it negates the antiviral properties of remdesivir, and that drug is hydroxychloroquine. In 2020,
It's very convenient. That's the one drug that can't be is the hydroxychloroquine that like Trump and all them were pushing for. It's very, very convenient.
in January, there's this incredible study that's published where there's been over like a 10-year period where a company has been funding a research study gene mapping all the genes of the venoms and proteins and peptides inside of king cobra venom. And in January 2020, they published their findings. Oh, ask me if I was shocked when I saw that it was 19 toxic venom proteins that they isolated that specifically target organs in your body. So I go to the funding part of the study, and I want to know, well, who funded this and how many companies? It says that the majority of the company's funding and studies funding came from a company called Genentech. Genentech is a subsidiary.
Another question I have, I guess, would be if this is like, I know he's going, I don't know if he's mentioned it yet, but I know he's going there, that this is supposed to be in the water, these venoms. Why would not everybody get it, I guess? Like, it doesn't explain the, like, how low the transmission was, I guess. You would think that if it was in the water, it'd be affecting everybody. And if it was venom, it would be still affecting people. People wouldn't become immune to it. Kind of like how we're seeing now, where like, not a lot of people are getting it because they've already had it. You would just be constantly, like, taking more and more venom, which would, in my mind, make it worse, right? I don't know. Let's see. Maybe he'll bring that up somewhere.
I don't know anything about these companies. Never even heard of them. The employees of Genentech, who were the authors of this study, said they have a conflict of interest because they actually hold shares and stocks in Roche. And all I did was go like this. Isn't that just like Genentech? Never heard of Genentech. Is there a correlation between Genentech and Gilead? This is not a joke. I typed it down on the internet. Is there a connection to Genentech and Gilead? Oh my God. Gilead bought 2 facilities that deal with biological studies from Genentech in 2011 and then brought 55 of their executives into Gilead in 2011. Just when that King Cobra study started.
Good coincidence.
Gilead is the manufacturer of remdesivir. I guess what's been known since 2005 blocks the nicotine receptors in the brainstem being injured by cobra venom and viper venom. Guess what drug does that? Or hydroxychloroquine and chloroquine. Remdesivir, packaged and stored as it is delivered to hospitals, comes in a little glass vial. It's called lyophilized powder. It actually has a white to yellowish tint. Guess what color snake venom has when it's stored? Then to be diluted in sodium chloride or distilled water to be administered in an IV. Or if people are buying King Cobra venom lyophilized, they mix it in the same preparation as listed on the fact sheet for remdesivir to actually take cobra venom or any other viper venom and inject it into horses to make monoclonal antibodies. When you read the emergency use authorization for remdesivir, it states, this one from January 21st, that every practitioner who administers this to a COVID patient, pediatric or not, you have to evaluate for what's called prothrombin time. Prothrombin time means if it increases the prothrombin time, it means it's taking your blood's ability to coagulate and making it longer. So it thins your blood, you can't clot. You will internally bleed to death. With remdesivir, it is stated on the emergency use authorization, every patient has to have its prothrombin time checked before you give it remdesivir and during treatment. Do you know what?
How do you check that?
You know what King Cobra venom does to the blood?
It makes it so that it can't clot.
It makes it so it can't clot. You know what one of the evidences is? It's prothrombin time. And if you look at the CDC's website and NIH's website on the adverse events from remdesivir, called Beckley, it actually says it increases prothrombin time, which is exactly what King Cobra venom does.
How many King Cobras are there out there? Is there enough to produce
is lyophilized
this
peptides
magnitude of
proteins of King Cobra venom. The University of Arizona published last summer a paper when they actually evaluated the blood samples and tissues of people who died, hundreds of them, from 2 different hospitals, after being treated for COVID, which means they got what drug? Remdesivir. When they evaluated their blood, the title of their published article is
interesting.
Welcome back. Why do some people, seemingly perfectly healthy, die from COVID and others don't? It's a question baffling experts during this pandemic.
It sure is. And new research from the University of Arizona suggests we're closer to getting an answer. As Team 12's Jess Winters explains, it seems to boil down to an enzyme that's also found in rattlesnake venom.
Rattlesnakes.
What does this
Rattlesnakes are
rattlesnake
very similar though.
have to do with COVID-19 deaths?
We turned much of my research in my lab towards COVID a year and a half.
That's not funny.
Hilton says he got blood samples from more than 100 patients in a New York ICU. They either had no COVID, a mild, moderate, or severe case of the virus. He did some fancy schmancy artificial intelligence in his lab and discovered 2 distinct patterns in the people who were dying from COVID.
These patterns, number one, told us that the vital organs were in trouble. But the other looked as if they were being attacked by some enzyme.
He says he then found the highest concentration of this enzyme that has ever been found in humans.
These levels attacking internal organs means multiple organ failure and death.
So where do the rattlesnakes come into play?
This enzyme is a humanized version, part of the same family as the active ingredient in snake venom.
In simple terms, this enzyme related to rattlesnake venom that's been found in humans is likely causing tremendous damage, leading to COVID-19 deaths.
and then they take you through all of the elevated enzymes in the blood samples of these people that are naturally found in rattlesnake venom and viper venom that are in levels they've never seen before. You want to know how they got there? 5 to 10 days of remdesivir. They've known since 2005 if you inject a mouse with cobra venom, you inject it like they're doing with remdesivir, injecting into your veins, it actually causes a cytokine storm in the lungs of all animals. I am convinced that COVID-19 is not a respiratory virus of any kind. It is actually venom poison, and they're using, I believe, synthesized peptides and proteins from venoms of snakes.
Synthesized. Okay, that was
And
my
they're
question.
administering them and targeting them to certain people. Now, the amazing thing about these 19
Alright, so he says targeting towards certain people, but I've got stuff to do. I'll watch the rest of this video. got about 26 minutes. Probably make it 1 or 2 more videos. Thanks for watching. Appreciate it. Peace. Oh.